What's up, guys? It's Jake with Shoemaker Invest. In this video, we're going to focus on going through the numbers of the property through the buy and hold or the cash flow method, or also sometimes referred to as the BRRRR method, the buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. So this is going to be going through the numbers as if we buy it, fix it up, refinance it, and rent it out. And in the last video, we went over, the flip and sell aspect of it. So first we need to figure out what our income is. So that's going to be up in this top left-hand corner. With 2 units, a 2-bedroom and a 3-bedroom unit, each with 1.5 baths, I'm figuring total we could probably get $1,750 in rent. I listed a couple other options on different ways that properties can make money aside from just the rent. And that would be if there's a garage on the property, you can charge that and rent that out for an additional fee on top of the rent to either store their stuff like a shed or to store their or keep their car. Another thing is laundry. If you charge for the laundry services, you can make money through that. Another way you can make money is also if you had like a billboard or some sort of advertising on the property as well. But we're going to assume that we're just getting money through rent here. Next, we have our income here, or our gross scheduled income, GSI for short. And that is what our income would be if both units were rented out all the time. And that's the difference between that and our gross operating income would be we're going to factor in vacancy, which we're going to take a look at down here in our expenses column. But that's going to be the difference between our gross scheduled income and our gross operating income. So now taking a look at some of the expenses, the water and sewer, the tenant would be paying them, so we don't need to worry about that. Same thing with the electricity and heat. The tenant would all be paying their own utilities. Everything's going to be separated out so that they can pay that. Taxes, however, we are going to have to pay. So we're going to estimate $350 a month in taxes. We're also going to estimate $100 a month in insurance. And then we have our mortgage component down here, which we would need to figure out. Okay, so to figure out the mortgage component, we need to refinance the property because we don't have an existing mortgage on it. We're going to do the BRRRR method, which is the fourth component, is refinance. So we have our after repair value that we calculated in our last video of $155,000. And typically when you refinance, you can only pull out 80% of that. So if we put in our 80% here, expand this, we have our cash out of $124,000. So $124,000 is 80% of our after repair value. So that's what our new mortgage would be. And then if we take what we cashed out, what we got our mortgage for, $124,000, and then subtract our total cost of this project, $102,000, we're left with $21,000 extra. So that means we get all of our money back that we spent buying the property and fixing it up, plus an additional $21,000 to then go and do whatever really we want with. You could, buy a car with it. You could invest it and roll it forward into a different investment. Now you do technically still owe this money back. It's not like 100% profit, but the idea is that the rent would be covering the mortgage here. So it would essentially be, you wouldn't be paying it back, but your tenants would. So $124,000 mortgage, if we do some quick mental math, that comes out to, with a 30-year fixed mortgage at 3.8%, that comes out to $578 a month. So next we have our maintenance, Capex, management, and vacancy. I highlighted these all because these are typically calculated as percentages and not necessarily just a flat fee. And they're all kind of also depending on the type of property you have and the condition that it's in. So one metric for the maintenance is typically referred to as the 1% rule. There's another 1% rule that we'll talk about in a few minutes, but this 1% rule is used to determine what to allocate monthly to maintenance. And that is that you should allocate, or you should calculate 1% of the value of the property to allocate annually. So 1% of $155,000, which would be our value of the property. 1% of that is $1,550. So then we would divide $1,550 by 12. I think that ends up coming out to roughly about 8% or so. So we'll put 8% here, and that comes out to about $140 a month. Next, we have Capex, which stands for capital expenditures. And these are all of the big ticket items that are typically depreciated and have a long life, such as the roof, the driveway, the plumbing system, the hot water heater, all larger things that are typically very expensive would be reserved for the CapEx component. And this can be also, this figure, what we want to allocate to this each month depends also on the condition of the property. So in our case, since we pretty much, kind of rebuilt this house pretty much from the ground up, the initial CapEx is going to be virtually nothing. It has a brand new roof. It's going to have all new electrical, all new plumbing, and so on. So really you could, in the beginning, not allocate a whole lot here, and then as time goes on, allocate more. Or you could just get in the habit of having a set amount that you want to store. So we'll go with another 8% here, another $140 a month. And the next is management. So this would be if you were to hire a property manager, they're going to typically take 10%. That's pretty standard. So you would be paying them $175 a month. However, I wouldn't be hiring a property manager. That would be me. So that's going to be 0. And then we have vacancy. So this is what I was talking about before. That's going to be factored into our gross operating income. Typically vacancy, a standard is 5% to figure for a tenant not living in your unit. So since I put 5% in here, that calculated $87.50. And then up over here on our left, we can see that our gross operating income decreased by $87.50. Okay, so we have all of our income, we have all of our expenses. Now down here we have our monthly cash flow of $267 a month, and then our net operating income, which would be our monthly cash flow times 12 for the full year, would be a positive $3,204. So this is what, if this was rented out with a gross operating income of $1,662.50, we would make $3,204 a year. Another thing to mention with these highlighted items, these aren't being spent each month. You're still getting the full value here. You're just allocating it in a separate spot for future events such as maintenance. You're going to have to pay someone, or you're going to have to mow the lawn, or you're going to have to go on a service call to unclog a drain or fix a faucet or something along those lines, and that's what this money is going to be used for. So I guess the next thing to look at is $3,204. Is that good? So there are tons of metrics that we can look at to analyze this. One of them is the 1% rule. It's a different 1% rule. And that is that the monthly rent should equal 1% of the purchase price of the house. So this one is also a little misconstrued because technically the purchase price of the house was $21,000. But if we take that 1% of the after repair value, so the value of the house, so what someone else would pay for it, that is actually what we calculated for our maintenance, that $1,550 figure, and our rent is over that. So that's one metric. That's kind of the easiest thing you can look at before you even buy a property is the 1% rule in effect. Now, another thing to think about that we didn't really talk about over here with this $21,000, that is essentially like free money. Now, not exactly free money because we still had to put all of our time and effort into it. It's not like this is $21,000 after we hired all the labor to get this done and get the property to where it is, but that is free money, and we're getting all of our money back that we spent. So that $102,000 that we had to cough up to spend for this property, we're getting that all back in our pockets. So essentially this net operating income is $3,000 a month that doesn't really cost us to have. All of our money's back, everything's good. It's kind of like we set something in place and now we're just printing this money if everything goes according to the numbers, which they never do, but you can only hope. So moving on to a couple other key metrics is on this third tab here. Some popular ones are your ROI, return on investment, your cash on cash return, and then your cap rate. Now again, this is kind of a weird, unique investment in which our return on investment and our cash and cash are exactly the same because we didn't use any debt. This would be 100% cash, financed. But our return on investment is our annual return over our investment. Same thing with our cash on cash return, which would be our net operating income, which is this figure, divided by the total cash invested. And the reason why these are the same is because the total cash invested is equal to the investment amount. Then we have our cap rate, and that is our net operating income divided by our total value. So this is typically used to kind of compare different properties that are similar to see potential returns. And now you might be looking at these and you're thinking, these are awful. These are super shitty returns, 3%, 3%, and 2%. That's awful. But Jake, you were just saying how good of a return that is. And that's because these aren't necessarily true, because we got all of our investment back. So technically this return is over 100% because the investment is zero. We got our whole investment back. We're not waiting to capture it back. So we're well over 100%. So these returns are actually being calculated on if I didn't get that initial investment back. It's really looking at the $3,000 divided by the total amount that we put in. So if I didn't get this money back, then yeah, that would be the return and that would be awful. And I would never do that. But that's what those are actually being calculated based off of. So we went through both the BRRRR method as well as the flip method. Honestly, I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I'm going to wait to see once the project gets further down the line and I can get more accurate numbers. But feel free to leave in the comments what you think I should do, what you would do if you're in my position. And well, definitely only time will tell. Thanks for watching this video, guys, and I hope you learned something.